Professor Tony Attwood, it is such an honor to have you here. You've been one of my role models since I started in this field. So I've followed your work for more than 16 years now. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Carla. Thank you. That means a lot to me, actually, because I'm hoping to give an explanation of why autism, why have I been so involved in it?
Yes.
And when I was 19 years old, and I discovered autism for the first time by visiting a special school and working with two classically autistic kids, I made a decision that my career would be autism and that one day I would like to be an expert in autism. So what you have just done is affirm my ambition as a 19-year-old. So whenever you say that, I go, great, because that's what I've grown up to be who I wanted to be.
Oh, that is amazing. And I don't think a lot of people actually get to that point where they're like, I've accomplished what I've set out to accomplish. So, and I think the beautiful thing about this field is that we continue learning so much and it evolves because it is a relatively new field if you look at the other conditions out there. So I think that's also something that I've seen in your career that you've learned and grown with it.
Yeah, and my learning, yes, I do read the research articles. As a professor, I have to. It's interesting. But I find that the research articles are about 10 to 15 years behind clinical experience and confirms clinical experience. So one of the things that I do, I have in a little area down here, a little booklet in which I write down words of wisdom from the clients and families that I see. So although I read the research articles, I write the books, yes, but my greatest source of inspiration and wisdom is the words of those with autism themselves.
Yes.
And I write it down and I think, oh, that was good. And I'll remember that. Yeah.
That's awesome. I've actually got a book where I note down some quirky sayings
yes,
of some of my clients, and just because it truly inspires me to wake up every morning, just having that interaction with my clients, because the way that they see the world and just their sense of humor and how they disprove some of the myths of autism.
yes,
the typical one, like autistic people don't want to be social, they don't want to have friends. I mean, really, like, we can disprove that.
Yes, but also how brave the person is in adversity,
yes,
of wanting to engage with others, but rejected and bullied and teased, and yet still hope for a friend.
Yes.
And how they cope with their challenges with emotions like anxiety and so on, but then achieve areas of excellence. I have just seen an 11-year-old boy, and I've been seeing him for the last nearly 6 months. And his fascination is with the lead electric guitar. And today, his parents actually played me a video of him. He's amazing. He's 11, but he's like Eric Clapton. He's like Jimmy Page,
yes,
and he's 11, and his ability to play the guitar is absolutely extraordinary. So you see moments of talent that are amazing.
There are these moments of excellence, but also parents need to remember that the typical day is sometimes very difficult for somebody on the spectrum. So it might just be that going out there and meeting people and everyday tasks might be a little bit tricky. So yes, definitely what you're saying is they've got so much determination, and I'd love that about the field that we're in.
Yeah, it's great. And I don't intend to retire. I have still lots of things to learn and do. I've climbed all the mountains I need to climb. I'm helping other people climb the same mountains.
Oh, wow. And now you can skydive up those mountains.
I do. I fly. I have a lovely vantage point. Now, Carla, you have some themes that you would like to explore.
Yes. Thank you for keeping me on track. This is what I need. So what I wanted to ask you, Professor Tony, is with all the years of experience that you have, what do you believe that are the current challenges in terms of the therapeutic modalities out there? Do you feel that the support services can be better, or do you think it should change?
There are values with support services, but one of the most important things is that they are trained in autism, because you have to have a different manual. You have to have a different approach. And some of the things that you work with typical individuals or intellectually disabled individuals and so on won't work in autism. Now, some people in those services intuitively get it. They don't need to go on any training programs. They're great, but not everyone. Now, that means that there's a training. Another part of, to a certain extent, support services is the staff turnover. It's too fast. And parents say, there was a rapport, there was a relationship, it was magnificent, but it was only 3 months and they moved on. Because often the support services don't pay enough. It's not really a good living wage. And so you get people who are there because of benevolence and wanting to help autistic individuals. But the turnover, and for the autistic person, it takes them a long time to get to know somebody, to trust them. Autism and trust is very important. So it's staff turnover and changes that concern me. But it's also looking at support services for areas like daily living skills, from dressing skills to budgeting and so on need to be covered. But also social network, to make sure that that person has a social network. I call in autism, there are the introverts and the extroverts. And the extroverts want to socialize, but may not have the opportunities, so need encouragement there. But also with emotion management. So the support services have to be very diverse in the support they provide.
Yes, that one size does not fit all, 100%. No. Do you perhaps have some practical strategies where parents can support their children or take part in this education? Like you said, the staff turnover is quick. So do you feel that parents can take more of an active role there? Do you have some practical strategies for them?
Yeah, the way I describe it is that mother and father have been studying their son or daughter very hard. And in study, if you study for 7 years, you are given a PhD. So I say that these parents have an honorary PhD in the study of their son or daughter.
That's beautiful.
So that knowledge needs to be given credit because they've tried various things. They know what is likely to work. They are wise. They are great sources of information. Otherwise, you'll keep repeating the same mistakes. Yes. So they are central because they're there for the person's life. It's a marathon. And they are there for the successes, but also the failures too. So it's looking at how can you support the parents to maintain their involvement and commitment, because they're the central individuals. When all the other staff have come and gone, they're there and will continue to be there. So it's family support in a way. But it's also being involved with the social and emotional dimensions. School and various other centres will work on academic skills, learning to read, learning to get academic qualifications, perhaps for a job, etc. But at school, there is the social curriculum, but nobody may be teaching it because it's not viewed as a school's responsibility. So what I say to parents is, could you be a mentor for your son or daughter? And we play the game of puzzling peers. Okay? And we say, look, there's going to be some time in the day when one of your peers rolled their eyes, said something but didn't match their facial expressions, or they were weird. Please let me know. Let's see if we can work it out. Now, they're not here, so you don't have to be embarrassed or concerned about this. You were there. Let's look in the mirror together. Can you make the face that they made at the time? What did they say? What did they do? Was that friendly or not friendly? A bit difficult to determine. Okay, if it happens again, you could say, am I reading you right? Or I'm not sure what to say here. Or why you're doing this? I'm confused. Can you help me? So we play the game of puzzling peers, but that can include being bullied and teased. And for many autistic individuals, they're nice guys. They wouldn't do that. And they can't understand why someone would enjoy hurting them
Exactly.
and being cruel to them.
Yeah.
And they ruminate on that for a long time because they can't have closure, because they can't understand why. So it may well be when they get home from school or centre, give them time to relax. And then it's a bit of an opportunity. Okay, today, what went right? What was good? Yeah. What was confusing? And let's explore that too. But also, it's going through emotion management,
Yes.
because it's a project on emotions. How to read a face, how to read body language. For typical individuals, you don't need to learn how to read a face. You know it. You know, duh. I mean, of course that person is embarrassed.
Yeah.
But in autism, you may not know that. So what I would say for parents, they need to teach the individual how to read body language. You can have various games of expressing feelings. That is the opportunity to read it and express it. And parents can do a project on feelings. So social and emotional, I would see very much as something parents can do.
Yes, exactly. That is so important. I think even from a young age to start teaching about body language and, you know, that people lie and that they don't always mean what they're saying. I think that's very important. My partner identifies as an Aspie, and I know that that's not really the terminology that we should be using, but that's what he identifies with.
Yeah.
And he said the same thing. From a very young age, he started learning about body language in a scientific way. So he would assess somebody and then he would go back to his studies and learn about what these facial expressions mean.
Indeed. And many actually grow up to become psychologists. Yes, they do. Because they've been studying people since they were 3 years old.
Oh, right. Okay.
It is. But psychotherapy has been designed by typical people for typical people.
Yes.
And what we need is psychotherapy designed by and administered by those on the spectrum themselves.
Yes.
Because they've got credibility, they've been exploring people, etc. So we
Yes.
need a new psychotherapy
Yes.
that is specifically for autism.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. We've got autistic advisors and they often will tell us, no, you should be administering this in that way, or you should be trying different ways. For example, when we study emotions, and you know, this is something that you were talking about now, what one of our autistic advisors said is, if you show us a social story about somebody else, we're not going to be able to, well, you know, that was her experience. I wasn't going to be able to associate or relate to that story. So why don't you take a photo of me and paste it on these books that you want to create, and then I'll be able to associate or relate to that scenario. And that made all the difference.
Yes, it needs to be personalized. You can use video cameras on your phone. You need to make it real to that person. So when you have a project, and the project may be, okay, let's take a picture of your family when they're showing various emotions. Here's your mum really happy because she just made a chocolate cake, etc. Here's your auntie having a panic attack because she's just seen a spider.
Yes.
Here's your dad having a meltdown because his car's broken down and he's forgotten the insurance. You can see how angry dad is.
Yes,
Okay?
exactly. Yeah.
So it's going through, otherwise it's got to have a sense of reality for the individual. Otherwise it's artificial.
Speaking of all of these scenarios, I've noticed that a lot of my older individuals that I work with are exhibiting a lot of anxiety. Do you find the same in the clients that you see? And are there ways to work through this anxiety?
Yeah. Anxiety is not in the diagnostic criteria directly, but it is. And when I talk to children, teenagers and adults, and I say, which aspect of your life would you like to remove? It's anxiety, not necessarily autism. It's anxiety, because that really affects their day, their quality of life, their sensory sensitivity. But it also leads to various behaviors to manage anxiety, routines and rituals. Diagnostic criteria B2. That's actually a coping mechanism for anxiety. Special interests. Yes, it's a thought blocker. But you also get someone who, in trying to cope with their anxiety, can be very controlling and almost, as the British would say, pathological demand avoidance. Because if I agree to your request, I surrender control of my life. And so that can be a concern. But it also means that anxiety and sensory sensitivity go together. The more anxious you are, the greater the sensory sensitivity, the more the fear and worry of what's going to happen. So we really do need to focus on anxiety as a major barrier to success for an autistic individual who likes routine and consistency, because there's no risk of anxiety-provoking situations. So I always say, as a clinician, anxiety has been my biggest challenge.
Yes, for me as well. I feel like from early age to adults, we work with various age groups, and our youngsters are exhibiting anxiety. You know, they're showing signs of they don't want to enter specific scenarios and or environments and experiences, and we try and go with them and, like you said, mentor them through them or guide them through these situations, because we do know that practice makes progress.
Yeah. And one of the things you say is, what can parents do? A lot. First of all, not to get anxious themselves. They need to model calmness. And I would say to parents, choose a time when you're anxious, you've lost your car keys or something, and speak aloud your thinking processes. If I'm calm, I'm smart. If I'm calm, I got a good memory. I'll ask for help. There'll be another solution to this, because what you want is the parent's voice to be the autistic person's voice, because they need to tune in to your thinking in that situation and absorb those approaches. The worst thing to do psychologically when you're anxious is to run away from the problem. So it's being very brave and very supportive in that situation. But it's learning a whole range of activities that range from yoga to cognitive behavior therapy. And there are many strategies that we will bring in for the individual, from physical exercise to all sorts of strategies to reduce anxiety. We have a broad approach, but parents can very much work on this by taking particular situations. Often parents read their son or daughter better than anyone else.
Yes.
Not only do they read them, they manage them. This is why you get separation anxiety, because mum is the only one who reads me, supports me, and calms me. Nobody else does it as well as she does. If she's gone, I can't cope.
Yeah.
So it's going through, what are the situations? What are the things that you can do to help? And having a project on anxiety, it's not a bad thing. It's just something that happens every so often. But ways of managing it, that if you do succeed in reducing anxiety, the quality of life of the young adults is far better.
Yes, 100%. And also, just like you said, focusing on the actual emotion of anxiety, because I think a lot of times we kind of shy away from what's seen as negative emotions. And we all experience this. So we need to kind of normalize this too.
Yeah, anxiety gives you energy. Otherwise, you'd be a couch potato. You wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
But if it's too much, it's the fight, flight, or freeze.
Yes.
And this is something we work on, is you can control your anxiety, not your anxiety controls you.
Do you believe that mentors, I know we touched on it earlier, but do you believe that autistic kids and adults should have mentors at a younger age to kind of help them guide through these situations and model it, like you said, as well?
Absolutely, without question. And I've discovered this over time. For example, we run groups, initially for teenagers, on a whole range of topics, from bullying and teasing, making friends, emotion management, being yourself, etc. And what we found, and depression, and what we found, that when we had a group of autistic individuals, they relaxed. When they were with neurotypicals, they felt vulnerable, targeted. They were going to be despised and dismissed and so on. But in a group of autistic individuals, they're relaxed. They didn't feel insecure or going to be targeted. And they opened up. And when one of them would talk about, I feel really depressed at times and I cut myself and I think there's no point in living, all the other autistic individuals immediately provided phenomenal emotional support and encouragement and strategies that had credibility. Because others would say, yeah, I felt like that and did like that. But I found that, you know, those, and this worked. And the person listened because it came from somebody who's experienced it. And when they said, okay, I'll try it, they were delighted next week to tell the group what they'd done. Because all the group were going, Ray, good on you. And which was very genuine.
Yes, that gives me goosebumps, that interaction.
Yes, it does. And so what we did subsequently was have graduates from the group come to subsequent groups. So they had been through it and they were there almost as our assistants in the group.
Great.
And sometimes we would back off and they would go, and some would go, oh, great, brilliant. You're really good at that. And several of them have gone on to study psychology. But we could trust them to explain clearly in autistic language with a credibility that the others really identified. Now, this is actually part of, I'm going to do a quick commercial break.
Yes, please
for
do.
A book called Been There, Done That, Try This, an Aspie's Guide to Life on Earth, Aspie Mentor Advice on Overcoming Daily Stresses. So we did a survey, over 300 people. What are your stressors in life? First, anxiety, self-esteem, coping with change, meltdowns, depression, sensory, making friends, etc. So there's about 17, 18 topics. And we got mature over 40 autistic adults to write an essay or advice that what would you like your teenage young adult self to know that you've now discovered?
Oh, that's
Could you
brilliant.
let us know what that is? Yeah.
Yes.
And talk to those people from your wisdom. I contributed because I give clinical justification and validation. But if you want a good book on how to help autism, it comes from other autistic individuals.
Yes, that's exactly what I always ask all of my autistic allies and, you know, the advisors and the people that I speak with is, what do you wish that your parents knew, or what do you wish that you knew at a younger age? And a lot of them would say most of the answers are actually about accepting that there are going to be challenging times, but a lot of it is accepting yourself from a younger age. And I feel like that's such an important point.
That's a crucial one. And clinically, the more and more I explore this area, the more and more I think that this is very important, is acceptance. And self-acceptance is crucial, because one of the things I do in a diagnostic assessment is I'll say, I've just met you. You're a new person to me. Who are you? I don't know. That's why I'm here. I know who I'm supposed to be. I know who my parents want me to be, but it's not the real me. How do I identify and become the real me? And so we say, be a first-rate Aspie, not a second-rate neurotypical.
Yes, that's brilliant. I love that saying. That's so sad, though, for me. It's because I grew up in quite a quirky household. So we were always told that we should be as quirky as we want to be, and that's brilliant. But I don't feel like a lot of people have that freedom. And the masking then increases, and then it leads again to the anxiety, which is something that we're seeing now with our older individuals. But that's brilliant.
And it is important. What I say is, okay, I don't want to change you. I want you to learn how to explain yourself. Yeah. With the phrase, for example, I'm the sort of person who. So I'm the sort of person who tends to look away when you're talking. I'm not being rude. It helps me concentrate on what you're saying. I'm the sort of person who is fascinated by vintage cars, but I can be boring, but I'm not good at reading the signals that I'm boring. If I am, please tell me. I won't be offended. Yeah. I'll stop. Okay.
Yeah.
So you take whatever is confusing or abrasive to others and explain it. You can either teach it, facial expressions. Humans have over 400 facial expressions, and they're in a fraction of a second and gone. Now, you can teach all 400 facial expressions, or say, I'm not good at reading facial expressions. I can't read you. Tell me, how are you feeling at the moment?
Yes.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Or yes, exactly. It's just that self-advocacy part I feel like is so important, because then, you know, the individual can say, look, I didn't know if that was a joke. Were you being sarcastic? I didn't understand. And that's a lot better than masking or just laughing because everybody else is laughing. I feel like that's a slippery slope.
It leads to not only being fake, but a feeling of, I cannot express the real me. And they won't accept the real me. And the self-doubt and the exhaustion of masking leads to depression.
Yes.
And that feeling of, I can never reveal who I really am. And I say, yes, you can, slowly and carefully. And it may be someone you trust, and then you can explore how to do that. And then gradually, when you've got confidence, not to everybody that you meet, but you can express the real you and to be proud of the real you. Because if they did know that, they would know how brave you are, how you've been very imaginative and creative in coping with your challenges, how people have been absolutely horrible to you, to the state of trauma, and yet you keep going. People need to know that.
Yeah, that perseverance. That's beautiful. With the current situation with autistic adults and parents and professionals working together, do you feel that we can do better as a community? I feel like everybody's here for the right reasons, but sometimes it feels like we're not all getting along. I feel like there's a better way, and I was hoping that you could reveal this better way to us.
Okay. Now, first of all, obviously working together is appropriate. But what we need to discover is the value system, thoughts and ambitions of the autistic individual. That is our starting point. And then see how we can achieve those. Because one of the issues is, in autism, there's a resistance to change. And if change is going to occur, it needs to be to the benefit of the autistic person, not necessarily everyone else. This is how your life will be easier in doing this. So we need to know, what are your values? What are your beliefs? What are your objectives? How would you like to be in 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Right, 5 years' time, right. We need to work back on that. Okay, you want to be an airline pilot? Yeah, okay. But we'll go work back from that. We won't challenge it. We'll just say, what do you need to know? Get your driver's license first, right? That's what you can focus on. So there's some degree of ambition or where you could be, and work on that as the person's team. But it is looking at motivation and the fact that change can be change for the better. Because often in psychotherapy, it's changing how you think, how you react, and there can be a resistance to change. But no, change can be good.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was speaking to an autistic adult, an advocate and a poet yesterday. His name is Russell Lehman. And he was telling me that, you know, he's in LA, just moved to LA for the last 4 months. He said it's been overwhelming, too many social interactions. But he said that this is what he's always wanted. So he's wanted this friendship circle, and now he's got true friends, but it's overwhelming because it's every day somebody is wanting to do something. And he said it's a lot of change, but with that comes a lot of benefits. So it's kind of like pushing him really hard for the benefits that he wants. So it's growth, you know, but yes, I do believe change is good.
It is, but it's also stress management.
Yes.
And realizing that there are certain social and sensory and emotional stresses that others are not aware of.
Yes.
And sometimes the autistic person is not aware of them themselves. And so eventually they have a nervous breakdown or a crash that will occur. So it's teaching that person to be self-aware and others to also be aware of when the stress is occurring, and to make appropriate strategies. I'm working with Maya Tode from Denmark, from Copenhagen. She has autism, and she's developed a strategy called energy accounting. So it's like having a bank balance. And in your day, there are circumstances that drain you or withdraw energy, socializing, change, crowds, certain people, and so on. But there are certain activities that deposit energy into your energy bank account. Being alone, being in nature, being with pets, your favorite interest, writing poetry. And so what you do is a numerical value of 0 to 100. And so you, every so often you say, how was socializing 0 to 100 today? Oh, 85. Okay. What about people's emotions? Oh, 95. They're infectious. In autism, other people's emotions are infectious. Okay, now what chances have you had for refreshment? Well, I walked in nature. 0 to 100, how powerful was it? 45. Okay, I spent some time alone, 60. Right, there's an imbalance here. You need and must write into your diary for next week, non-negotiable, more time alone, more time in nature, more solitude to refresh yourself. Otherwise, you're going to have a breakdown.
Yes, that's a great system. I think I might actually speak to Russell about this, that he can have a look at that. I think the only thing that he would say is that how do you determine the percentages, and is it always the same percentages? It's very specific.
No, it varies. So I may say socializing. What's the range? 30 to 100. Okay. So over the last day or week, what's it been this time? 75. So you always get a range. But what you're trying to do is recognize that, because sometimes the person may only know the stress levels by what they're doing, not what they're feeling. So I'm not engaging with astronomy as much. I'm not watching my favorite TV shows. Etc. So in other words, how do you tell that you're in a condition of stress? I do a lot of drumming. I do a lot of rocking. My sleep is disturbed. So you go through, what are the signs that you're stressed? Okay. So ones that you can see. People who know you may tell you that that's the case. What you talk about, what goes through your mind, how long it takes you to fall asleep, etc. What time you wake up. These are all the cues. If that's occurring, you're probably taking on too much. You need to review that.
I really like it. Professor Tony, you've got a personal connection to autism as well, not just a professional one. And I was wondering if there was anything that you wanted to say that you wish you knew, or many years ago when your son was still younger. I don't know if you want to speak about that a little bit.
Yeah. In hindsight, and this is a problem, I can now explain what I would have liked to have. For example, we would go out to family or friendship gatherings. Now, neurotypicals have the capacity of a bucket, and they fill it, and they're energized by socializing, and it's fantastic. But my son, Will, it wasn't a bucket, it was a cup, and it was a cup that was filled very quickly. And what he learned was obnoxious behaviors to make us leave. He would break something. He would be offensive or embarrassing, but he wanted to go. And we were saying, no, Will, it's good for socializing. What I would do now is say, okay, Will, you either have a secret code that you come up to your mum or I that says, I need to take a break, or we'll watch you and we know you need to take a break. We'll bring along your Lego. We'll bring along your favorite book. We'll find a bedroom in the house. You can play with your Lego. I will stay with you to make sure nobody interrupts and your capacity can empty, so you've got a full cup for the next period, etc. It's those sorts of things. But the other one is to take his anxiety as a teenager far more seriously. With the onset of puberty, anxiety didn't come in as a wave, it was a tsunami. It was phenomenal. And it'd always been mixing in with a certain crowd that we were, okay. But they were the crowd that first discovered at 14 alcohol and marijuana. And he'd always been anxious. And he said, when he first took alcohol and marijuana, he said, where have you been all my life? For the first time in my life, I feel relaxed. I feel calm. And that was it. It then became the quick fix and explored all drugs. And he's been a drug addict for the last over 20 years or so. Because of the addiction problems and lack of money, he committed armed robbery. He went to prison for 2 years. He's written a book on how to help Aspergers in prison because he doesn't want other people to experience what he did. It was traumatic. He got PTSD from being in prison. But it would have been to engage with his anxiety far more effectively because he found a solution that works for him, but it doesn't work for him. And it means that he's had major problems with addiction. And he's still an addict.
And it's not a long-term solution. And that's the sad part of it, is because you had that, it was a quick fix. And I think a lot of people actually fall into that because it's so difficult to notice when you're young, especially if you're on that part of the spectrum where it's difficult to see the signs. I mean, especially with somebody so close to you.
It's something that we should have picked up earlier, but as a parent, you're always hoping that they will grow out of it, that this is a temporary stage. Now, it was for a lot of his peer group, and they were all experimenting with alcohol and marijuana.
Exactly.
Very briefly, for a few months, maybe a year or two, gone. But for William, it had far more powerful effect on his well-being. It created a bubble of I don't care. And it meant that he met a group of people that became his peer group. And being autistic, he took drugs as a special interest. And he knew about drugs in a level that was amazing. My sister is an anesthetist. And she said, Will knows more about morphine than I do. And I prescribe morphine.
Really? Yes.
And of course, he was very popular in the group because if you've got a problem, phone Will. Will was the alternative, Dr. Attwood. And he will advise you what to do and so. And he really enjoyed the status of being the professor of drugs.
That's such a sad story, but it's also something that I feel like you're helping so many other parents through this, which is kind of, I mean, it's not the nicest thing, I guess, to say, but you're helping so many other parents, and he is also helping so many other children and parents. And I would advise anyone to read that book of his, to just kind of see how it is from the other side, you know.
It is. And in the alcohol and drug dependency services, 1 in 4 are autistic.
Oh, wow.
This is confirmed by clinical experience and research. 1 in 4.
Yeah, that is.
Alcohol and drugs is a major reason to engage in criminal activities, and 1 in 20 in custodial care in prison are on the spectrum, often because of drugs.
Sure, that is something that's overlooked. It really is overlooked. I don't think there's enough attention on this.
No. So this is where, in our previous conversation, and you brought up the topic of anxiety, please do. And we need to know this and have the foundations from the beginning. So that can then go from anxiety to depression and to anger, to explore your feelings, understand them. When you understand them, you can control them, and to show that you have the capability of doing so. And when you do, you're applauded. When you have a relapse, that you're not dismissed, you move on.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for being so open and communicating this with the people that are watching, because I know that it's hard, but like I said, you're really helping others, and Will is as well. So please just send love to your entire family. And thank you for everything, and thanks for all your advice. I am still the biggest fan.
Okay, thank you, Carla. And I hope to discover new things with autism as time goes by. But you've got some great questions there. I've really enjoyed the discussion.